because a lot of what we're seeing right now, the division comes from ignorance, about people not knowing our history of the United States of America, because they have been denied that history, in their education, and so we have to kind of turn that around, and because when we look at the difference between the states, for instance, say California and New York, as an example, and then the states in the South, what they were taught about the Civil War, and so in the South they would say it was a war between the states. They don't say this is a war about slavery, okay? And so, you have all of that ignorance that still exists, and that causes a lot of the division.
Okay.
So I think education is the key.
It always has been, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, we're not putting enough money into education that we should. Our teachers are underpaid. They don't have the support systems of counselors, social workers, nurses in their classrooms.
And how does, for you, what does it feel like to come back and participate? Like tomorrow, you're going to participate in the march and everything. To be back on, your home. You were born here in New Mexico, in Dawson. To be back in your home state, even though you've lived in California.
Well, it makes me really proud to know that Albuquerque, in the state of New Mexico, I think is the only city that I know of that actually honors Cesar Chavez, And I'm glad that they've added my name to the celebration also. But this is, I think, the 30th year that they have been doing this. And this is such I would say it's symbolic, I think, for the whole country. Because when you think of someone like Cesar, who, his entire life he worked for farm workers, and he, we might say, that precipitated the Chicano movement, and ended up making so many changes in our country to help our people, and not just Chicanos, but all farm workers, and that this city of Albuquerque is the one that chooses to celebrate that more than any other city, I think, in the country. It makes me really proud, and to know that here in my home state of New Mexico, is I always as I go around the country, I always say to people that I'm from the state of New Mexico, and I invite everybody to come to New Mexico to get humanized, because I think this is the state that has this ambience, you might say, of just of kindness, and service and helping people.
Earlier you talked about education is the key to all of this. How difficult is it to get? I know with your foundation you do a lot of education too. How difficult is it to bring that education to people? Because the United States is huge. It is a huge country, and there's a lot of land and there's a lot of pockets. How difficult is that to get education to those people?
Well, I think it has to start with people voting, and people demanding that we have ethnic studies in our schools. They just voted that in California, by the way. It's now mandatory that every high school, that has to be a requirement for graduation, that they have ethnic studies, that we have women's studies, that we have labor studies, that we have civic studies, so people know about how important it is for them to vote. So, but we can start with people voting, and then demanding, number one, not only that we get these different types of curriculums in our schools, but also to make sure that our teachers get paid more money, And teachers are on strike in Los Angeles right now, and also the classified workers to get an increase in wages. So that combination of people voting to make sure that we can get those curriculums, but then also the resources, the financing to make it possible.
At the end of the day, how do you just let everything go?
Well, I like to hear music,
okay.
And I'm a news junkie, and I like to watch comedy, especially in the evenings. After all of the work during the day, and then hearing all the negative things that are happening, just to let it all go. So I like to watch Colbert.
And have you had your green chili yet?
Not yet today.
Not yet.
but every time I come to New Mexico, I take some home with me. Okay, so I always have green chili in my refrigerator. Let me go back to the other thing. The other thing that we have to do, we have to make sure that we take over our school boards, okay? Because sometimes a law will be passed, but then the local school boards, if you have, especially right now because there's this whole anti-woke movement that is happening by some of the, extremists in our country, where they really want to ban our history from being told. I always like, when I speak to students, I tell them, Google the map of the United States before 1848, and what will you find? That a third of the United States was Mexico, okay? And, and reminding them that the North America and South America, this is the land of the indigenous people. So when we talk about immigrants at the border, they're not immigrants, this is their land. Yeah. This is their land. And this is the kind of history that people don't know. So just to remind them. So it's really important that we get good people on our school boards that are going to introduce the curriculums that I'm talking about right now, and so we can again, get rid of that ignorance. Again, I like to quote this Spanish philosopher from Spain, Jose Ortega y Gasset, and he wrote a book called The Revolution of the Masses, and the thesis of his book was, if you do not have an educated citizenry in a country, that the greedy, the powerful, and the corrupt will rule. And that's really important for people to understand. And the people have to understand that they have the power and the responsibility to make sure that we have good government.